It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing orthodontist Miguel Hirschhaut, who was born in Caracas, Venezuela in 1970. He's got a DDS from the Universidad Central de Venezuela. He's a specialist in orthodontist. University of Pennsylvania, Invited Professor of Orthodontics in Universidad Central Venezuela. Courses and lectures given on surgical orthodontics, interdisciplinary treatment, management of impacted teeth. He's taught in 10 different countries, classes given in 6 different U.S. universities, 1 Canadian university, and 9 Latin American universities. It is beyond an honor, Miguel, that you came on the show today to talk orthodontics to all my homies. How are you doing?
Good. The honor is all mine. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We're doing just fine.
So I wonder, you're in Venezuela and I'm in Phoenix. Those are both hot countries. Mine, we're over here 97 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sorry I don't have that in Celsius.
We're like 96.
96?
Yeah.
And does everybody usually talk Celsius or Fahrenheit?
No, Celsius. We only use Celsius degrees. We don't use
it's so embarrassing to be an American.
It should be around 29 centigrade degrees.
Yeah. You know, I had to compromise my mind since the Americans won't go Celsius and the entire planet and the galaxies on Celsius. Maybe we should negotiate and just both of us go to Kelvin. What would you think of that?
Well, it's a midpoint, maybe.
So, oh my gosh. So all things ortho, I mean, it seems like orthodontics is in under a lot of competition. I mean, we have the do-it-yourself orthodontics, Smiles Direct Club. There's Invisalign. It seems like there's been more changes in orthodontics in the last 10 years than the first 20 years I was a dentist. Do you see orthodontics under a lot of change and a lot of pressure?
I think the problem is you have to differentiate between quality orthodontics and just some of these things that are, I think, more commercial and are not such good quality stuff. And sometimes the patients get confused and they get the wrong information. So I think solid quality, good orthodontics based on diagnosis and good principles is one thing. And somewhere in the middle, there are these commercial inflows coming from the sites and some of the corporations coming from the sites. And I think sometimes the general public, it's in the middle, and sometimes they don't get the best treatment they should because sometimes they don't have enough information and they sometimes get, I think, misinformed about what really a good orthodontist is and what some of these companies that are, I don't think, bringing the best treatment for the patients, and sometimes they cannot differentiate well, you know.
So how do you wrap your amazing mind? And I'm so lucky to be talking to you because you have a very global perspective, definitely global perspective. You know, in market segmentation, I could buy a Ferrari, a Cadillac, a Chevy, a motorcycle, a go-kart, housing. I could buy, you know, an apartment, a 1-bedroom house, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, a mansion. On orthodontics, do you think the consumer has the freedom to decide if they want to do it themselves or go to an orthodontist? Or do you think that's a place where the government lays down the law and says no to these do-it-yourselves and no to the free market? Where do you draw the line between free people, free markets, free choice, and worried about your profession? Like I'm worried about, I just had my 6th grandchild yesterday. So this month I turned 58 and had my 6th grandchild. And I'm always thinking about what's dentistry going to look like in Arizona after I'm gone. So, you know, so how do you divide that up in your head?
The problem is that, you know, you have to go always by the bioethical principle, primum non nocere, or the first thing is do no harm. And I think orthodontics is a difficult enough profession. And if you add into the mix some of these companies that are putting people that do not have the training to treat the patients and doing treatments that are not easy, you know, even for a skilled orthodontist, I've been in practice 25 years, and sometimes I get cases that they puzzle me, and sometimes I make mistakes and I have to redo things. Just trying to, even doing things the best way you can. So I think these shortcuts, some of these things, I look at them as shortcuts. I don't think they provide the patient with the best solution, and you shouldn't be comparing apples with oranges. I think it depends what's your patient knowledge, what is their education, what are their I think quality standards. So I think the profession has gone through a lot of change, and I think big corporations have come into the to take a piece of the market share. It happens in your side of the world, and it also happens in our continent. And the problem is that if the public is not well informed, you're gonna get a lot of treatments that are gonna be relapsing and not providing for the patient the best solution. That's my intake. And I'm not saying Cadillac or Chevy or whatever, because I don't think I don't think treatment is based so much on price as quality of care. You can have an orthodontist that doesn't charge as much, and he can be a fantastic orthodontist. Or you can have an expensive practice, and it's not necessarily the best practice. I think more it's based on principles, ethics, doing the right thing, uh, being treated by somebody with a real education, with a good background, with good knowledge that follows the principles. That's my general take on that.
When you go around the world, dentistry has a lot of differences. And one of the things I've noticed the most about coming from America is that America, it had 9 specialties when I graduated 30 years ago. Now it's up to 12: oral surgery, endodontist, periodontist, pediatric dentistry, orthodontics, prosthodontist, dental anesthesia, oral facial pain, oral medicine, oral path, oral radiology, dental public health. But a lot of countries have only maybe 2 specialties or 3 specialties. What is it like in America? The 80% of teenage children living with their parents, 80% of that ortho is all done at an orthodontist. Adult ortho is starting to drift more and more into general family practice. What is it like in Venezuela? Is it most of it done by orthodontist or general dentist?
It's done by orthodontists, and I think actually with what you're saying, adult orthodontics it's even more of a concern. It should be done by an orthodontist, because then you have the perio issues, and if you don't have somebody with good knowledge of the biomechanics and good knowledge of the biology, you can get into a lot of trouble. So now in our country, at least, the orthodontics is done by orthodontists. Every now and then you get general dentists or pediatric dentists, doing some stuff that I don't think they should be doing, because I don't think they have the best training for that. But in general, I think the specialty is respected in this side of the world.
And what would you say? And what do you think of? So let's say a general dentist is listening to you right now, and he's saying, America, in Arizona, we had to close down for COVID-19 from St. Patrick's Day to Cinco de Mayo, about 50 days. That was tough, going to zero. But now the country's only about up to 71% is what for the nation. So dentists in America are still down 30%. How does it look in Venezuela? Is it about the
Well,
same?
the same, yes. People are just concerned about going to the orthodontist office, even though we take good control of the COVID with the measurements. But people that are not interested in going out that much, or even in spending that much money, because there's a lot of uncertainty still. And I think, by the way, we're like in the early rounds of this problem. I don't think we're out of the woods by any means. And I think in the COVID crisis, we're probably down to the 10 or 15% of the road we have to go through. So I think at least 85% um, uh, long road still ahead of us. So Probably people are just thinking over priorities and their spending and their and trying to stay home, trying not to go out so much. I haven't been to a restaurant in probably 6 months or so. So I think the world is changed, and especially not only the world, but the way the consumer looks at things. I think from a patient standpoint of view, what were your concerns before going to an orthodontist? Things might you might be looking out for different things like all these infection control procedures, and I think everything just changed with the COVID-19.
I always wonder what is a change during the pandemic versus what will take hold. I got out of school in '87, and HIV was the big virus of the day, which went on to kill 36 million souls. And a lot of things change, and they're so reminiscent of today. I remember the older dentists being told they had to wear gloves, and they were ready to, take a gun and shoot you. And they were Americans; they had the freedom. They were still doing stand-up dentistry with no gloves. But we changed. We used gloves, and we got rid of cuspidors and all this kind of stuff. What do you think we're changing now? That's not a panic during the pandemic, but that dentists will still be doing 10 years after the pandemic, like we're doing 10 years after HIV/AIDS.
I think what's going to happen is that the large volume practice they will have to shrink a little bit. I don't think you will be able to see that many patients, and I think you should have like distance between people, and that's gonna stay. That's not. I don't think it's gonna be an issue. It's gonna be gone in 1 year. I think it's like a long-term thing. I think scheduling of patients will be very different from now.
So, and that's what I saw right off the bat. I mean, it used to be work many chairs. Like you go into room one and numb someone up, go over here, do a hygiene check, cement a crown, then come back here and do a filling. You're working 4 rooms, but now with all the PPE, it's kind of like you got to get suited up to go into a room. It really changes dentistry from volume treatment, working several chairs, to just working one chair at a time. Do you agree with that?
Totally. Plus the reception area, it's more complicated even than the operatory because how you gonna get a few people sitting together in the reception area and you have to have like 6 feet of distance. And I think this is here to stay. I don't think this is a problem that's gonna last weeks or months. I think it's gonna be up for a while. I think years. And the other part that I think is bad is that the fear that's in the consumer and in general in the population, because even though COVID is a very bad disease, I think there's a lot of hysteria as well. And just to get the psychology of the people back to where it was before, it's gonna be a while. I think not only the physical threat of the COVID, but also I think a little bit of the paranoia that it's around all the pandemic.
Well, my father was ahead of his time because when I was 10 years old, he saved up his money and bought a Sonic Drive-In franchise. Do you remember seeing any of those when you were at ortho school in Pennsylvania? Sonic Drive-Ins?
No.
So you don't go, you walked inside McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King, but in Sonic, you just drove in and parked your car and you'd eat in your car. So my dad, I think, had 20/20 vision, and he could see all the way to 2020 with the pandemic, and he knew the waiting room in the restaurant would not be existing someday. Get it? That was my joke, 20/20 vision. So do you think teledentistry is going to be a long-term changer in orthodontics?
I think yes. I think initial consultation is gonna be done a lot through this way. Actually, I think also interconsultation with other specialists, and because before you would go and visit a colleague, a prosthodontist, or a surgeon, or a periodontist, I think from now on, I think Zoom, this platform, and all these social media platforms are going to play a role not only in first evaluations of the patient, but also in communicating with your colleagues. I think this is here to stay.
And do you I mean, how are you using telemedicine today? Are you doing it with Zoom, or what are you doing?
Yeah, we're doing a few consultations with Zoom, but most of our consultations are physical. Patient comes in, but some of the new patients, they contact us for the first time through Zoom, and we talk with them, and we just uh, order them their X-rays. So we're probably the first appointment. We're just making it. We're advancing into the first appointment. So when the patient comes, they already have their records ready, and we're ready for treatment planning and starting treatment, and just trying to avoid the unnecessary visits and making it more efficient, I think.
I love this for my mother. My mother's 82, and now she gets on her iPad and when she wants to talk to her doctor, and a lot of times she doesn't have to drive down there. And I always think about how many little old ladies or crash in a car on the way to a doctor that could have been a telemedicine visit. But you're saying Zoom is the most popular telemedicine in Venezuela, or just what you're using? Or?
That's what we're using. I don't know about other people. That's what we're using.
Yeah.
Probably everybody has a different system, but some of our first appointments, we're doing them by Zoom. And I think still you need the interaction with the patient. You need to look at inside the mouth. Even though they can send you pictures, we like to take our own clinical pictures, and I don't think the physical visit is going to be eliminated, not for sure, but I think maybe it's going to be optimized, and you will have less appointments and more productive appointments.
So you think telemedicine is here to stay? It's not going to be just a pandemic boom. Yeah. And
No,
you know what? Yeah.
because you know what, I also think it's a good way of getting second opinions, and I think it's a good way of even treatment planning cases interdisciplinary with other colleagues. You can do like a case discussion. So I think telemedicine has a lot of applications far beyond just looking at one individual patient. I think it's a good communication tool, even for webinars, for lectures, for everything. I think this Zoom and GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, they have changed even continuous education and congresses and everything. I think from now on, everything is going to be done more individually and more from your own space. So telemedicine, I think, is part of the wave. I think it's not something isolated. I think it goes together with the Zoom meetings and with the webinars and with the online lectures. I think it's more of a less of a personal contact and more of a contact through these platforms.
Um, you went to ortho school at University of Pennsylvania. My gosh. Since then, you've done 7,300 cases.
No, I've probably
What's that?
done that. That's an old. I've probably done like over 8,000 cases.
8,000 cases. Um, it seems like the consumer, the individual, wants these clear liners. What percent of your cases today are fixed arch wire versus clear liners?
Well, my practice, it's mainly fixed arch wires. I would have probably like 5 or 10% of aligners. I think aligners have an indication. I use Invisalign, which is the system we use, but I think I'm more of a fixed orthodontist person because I think in my hands, I have better control with fixed appliances. Even though I know they're fantastic clinicians that do things with Invisalign well, and the cases we've had with Invisalign, they worked out well. But in my hands and in my view, I get better control of the root of the teeth and of finishing with fixed appliances compared to Invisalign. Even though I think Invisalign is a necessity, And I think many patients want it and many patients ask of it, and you have to do it, otherwise you're out of the market. But I think there's indications for everything, and it's all in the judgment of the orthodontist. I know there are practices in the US that are only Invisalign, and I have friends that only do Invisalign. But it's not my case. I would say 85 to 90% of my cases is fixed appliances, and 10% of my cases is Invisalign.
Well, I think a lot of humans are extremists. I mean, I always tell my two oldest sisters are Catholic nuns. They went right out of high school into the nunnery, and a lot of times they're saying something. I always have to say, "Hey, Sister Ann, you know you've never been married, you never had kids, you know, this is extremist." I think when dentists just say, "I'm not doing amalgam and I'm not doing arch wire. I'm only doing Invisalign and composite." It's like, well, do you tell your patients when they come to you that you're not a dentist, that you're an extremist? And are you when a dentist tells me they have 2,000 patients and there's never one indication where an amalgam would be better? Say it's an Alzheimer patient, class fives, doesn't brush, doesn't even know who their own children are. You're telling me an inert plastic class 5 would last longer than amalgam? Because I'm pretty sure the composite class 5 would last 6 months and the amalgam would last 4 years. Or like a little boy who's not brushing, not flossing, and he needs you put in a MOD composite number 3. It's going to last 6.5 years compared to the research where amalgam's 38. And when these dentists tell me I don't do any fixed arch wire, I only do Invisalign, I say, well, okay, well, you're an extremist, or I hope you're working for Align Technology, but you don't sound like a doctor, because a doctor, I mean, how could you have one treatment for 8 billion humans around the world? I mean, that didn't even make sense.
Yeah, I think the middle of the road is the good place to be, and I think it depends on your skills and on what you're comfortable with and what's your knowledge. But I think I don't believe in all or none. I believe in the what's right for the right patient. You gotta do what the patient needs and what's correct for that patient.
I'm really honored to have you on the show. I mean, you've been published 30 times just in orthodontic journals. What are you talking about now? I mean, I look at a lot of your articles. You talk about TADS. You talk about non-surgical expansion in adults, management of impacted teeth. I don't even know where to start with you. Let's start with TADS.
Well, I think that's changed orthodontics for good. I think
First, explain what it is for the kids. We have a lot of viewers that are still in dental school. So, what is a TAD?
that is a temporary anchorage device. It's a fixed mini screw you put in the bone, and you move the teeth using it as anchorage. So it's like adding anchorage that you never had before. So of course it changed all the mechanics in orthodontics, and it allows you to do movements that you never could do before. And it's just increasing the orthodontics capabilities of achieving things that were not even think of before. Because not even that, these are also evolving to mini plates, which is like it's like a plate that connects three tabs, and you have better 3D control. So I think fix this total anchorage fixed devices like that change the whole landscape of orthodontics. Just open the envelope of the possibilities. And we used to go always by the envelope of the discrepancy in orthodontics, which is you could move teeth certain amount of millimeters this way or this way. I think with that, it all changed. It's now a new ball game.
Did TADS extinct headgear to the age of the dinosaurs, or not really?
What do you mean? Can you repeat?
Well, when I was little, a lot of cases needed headgear, and it was traumatizing for a lot of kids to have to wear and comply with headgear. Does TADS eliminate a lot of need for headgear?
Yeah.
What?
Well, I think headgear still has an indication every now and then. I use it every now and then. And I think that just takes away a lot of the compliance. because the orthodontist is in control of the movement, and you don't need as much compliance from the patient. You don't need them to wear like some of these appliances you're mentioning, or so much rubber bands and stuff, because you can do a lot of things intra-arch by using them as anchorage, and you don't need as much compliance from the patient. And also, you can move teeth uh, in a wider range, if you want to say. You you
Um,
were you were mentioning before non-surgical expansion with tats. That's a total game change. That's a game changer, because many of these adults that they used to be very narrow in their maxillas, we used to send them for surgical assisted rapid palatal expansion. We still do them when they're narrow and their skeleton mature. But sometimes with the tats, we can make their upper jaws wider and achieve palatal expansion using the tats as an anchorage without the surgery for the patient. So it's a less invasive treatment also as well.
if you did 100 orthodontic cases, how many of them would use TADS?
Probably nowadays, I would say absolute anchorage. Probably 30% of my cases.
30% of your cases. And is that normal, do you think, for orthodontists that you know, or is that more than
I don't know.
average? Or
I don't know, but I know that of 10 patients, 2.5 to 3 of them get tats in my practice. I don't know what the other people do.
say
But
that number again.
from 10 patients, at least 3 get tats. So it's between 2 and 3 get tats. So I think, yeah, I would say 30%. I think it just makes your life so much easier, and allows you to work more controlled, and I think more precise, because uh, you also eliminate the co-effects, the adverse effects, because every movement of a tooth has a co-effect. So if you use the tat, you just move the teeth that you want to move, but the ones you don't want to move, they don't move. So it also accounts, I think, for a more precise treatment as well.
Yeah. Um, what has got you excited and the most passionate about today? What is I mean, you've been an orthodontist for a long time. What's the latest hottest thing that's got you excited or passionate about?
But I don't think I don't go by fashion or other things. But what I really like, what's coming out, is the new technologies for 3D imaging. I think all these diagnoses, we're getting better at it because of the 3D imaging, and also I think long term, all the 2D imaging is going to be gone. Uh, we will have to change even our cephalometrics. We will have to change many of the diagnoses that we carry out today. It's going to be totally changed, and I think in the next 5 years, you will not see more head plates. Everything will be done through 3D, and I don't think you will see more cephalic X-rays and stuff like that. Also, photography, I think, is a big game changer. Clinical photography, because now you can document your cases better. Good for presenting your lectures, and it's good for explaining the patient. It's good for communication. And if you ask me what's the boom I see ahead, is better diagnosis measures with better 3D imaging and better photography.
So, same question. If you saw 100 new patients, how many of those would get three-dimensional CBCT radiography as opposed to two-dimensional?
I would say now we're switching. I would say probably 25 to 30% of my patients are getting that.
And what determines the 25, the 1 in 4 that gets CBCT 3D imaging, which has versus the other way 2D?
Well, the problem is, I don't know how it is there, but down here, sometimes we get the patients already with their x-rays taken. So if they have their x-rays, we're not going to do new x-rays. And also, it's a cost problem. It's more expensive to get the CBCT, where you can extract all the images from the CBCT. And also, still, some people are a big concern about radiation, even though that's not a concern because the new machines are so well calibrated and the amount of radiation is so small. But still, I think there's a lot of myths there, and people are afraid about these things.
And they always want to know which one you bought. Which one, which 3D CBCT did you get?
Well, we're using I use one that it's not mine, but we're using a Plameca one. I don't know the brands in the US. This is one called Plameca. It's a very good one.
Yeah, Plan Mecca is in Helsinki, Finland, and 3 Shapes in Copenhagen, Denmark. And when I visited those places, I always thought they were so high quality because, unlike Venezuela and Phoenix, which is so nice to go outside, it's so cold there. And for 4 months a year, it's almost dark. Everyone that worked at Plan Mecca and 3 Shape and the companies I visited, they said, man, in the winter, you're either going to work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and just work as hard as you can, or you're just going to sleep in your basement and stay drunk for 4 months. And they say the healthiest thing you can do through a long, cold, hard winter is work really hard every single day. So I think all the universities should be in Antarctica because then the kids won't be tempted to go out and play. There's always, my gosh, one of the longest, oldest debate. In fact, I hate to even ask you about this because it's so old and you're probably sick of hearing of it, but there's just a lot of general dentists in America. You know, people they believe what they want to believe. They're not interested in debate. And if their orthodontist pulls 4 bicuspids, they're done. They think you butchered the face, you made it concave. Is that an extremist position to say 8 billion humans, none of them need 4 bicuspid extraction? As an orthodontist who's done 8,000 cases, would you say, indeed, in fact, there are cases where you have to pull 4 bicuspids?
Of course, there's many cases you have to pull 4 bicuspids, and like before, I don't believe in all or none. I think there are indications for extracting teeth. By the way, there's many research being done, and extractions do not damage the profile if they're done properly. And this has been published in the AJO for many times. So I think extractions are part of therapy, and they have indications, and if they're well indicated, they're just the correct treatment for that patient.
So a lot of people say that a rapid palatal expander is something you have to do on a child, but once a girl is, once children are 16, 17 years old, and certainly by the time they're adults, that there's no way to expand the maxillary arch in adults, and that if you try to do it, you're just going to tip the teeth out. You're not going to expand the arch. How would you explain expansion needs in children versus adults, and just talk expansion? Yeah, you've written so much about it.
I think expansion, if you do, the earlier you do it, the better. I think if you do it in the primary dentition or even in the early mixed dentition, you're better off because the palate is more, it's simpler. Have in mind that the limit to expansion is not the midline suture, but all the circummaxillary and pterygopalatine sutures. But I think if the earlier you do it, the better off you are. But there are options nowadays with mini screws, and you can do them even in adults. And always, if the mini screw assisted rapid palatal expansion doesn't work, you still have the resource of going to a surgical assisted rapid palatal expansion. So you can do palatal expansion in anybody in any age range from 4 or 5 years old till whatever, I don't think there's a limit for that.
So you can expand the arch at any age?
More than the arch, the bone. We're talking about, we do the expansion for the patients that are maxillary transverse deficient. It's not a dental arch treatment, but a skeletal treatment for somebody that has a narrow maxilla compared to their mantle. It's a concept, And I don't think we should expand who doesn't need it. You should expand whoever has that discrepancy. And I don't think expansion is a way out of extractions either. If there are indications for extractions, you need to extract. So you have to know what your treatment is and who should receive it based on diagnosis. Just like we were talking before in the beginning, I think if you have solid diagnosis, you can do whatever procedure needs to be done. And I don't believe in all or none, good or bad, proper or improper. I think everything has an indication.
Yeah, and I'll take it one step further. I don't think that something could be good if it couldn't be bad. I mean, everything is. I mean, it's up, down, left, right. It's an extremist doesn't work. I want to talk about variances because one of the gifts I got, I had no idea. This month on August 4th was the 30-year anniversary of me lecturing. And when I gave my first lecture in New York City, I had no idea that someday I'd be in 50 countries. And what I loved the most is seeing the variance. I mean, you got 8 billion people in 200 plus countries, and they're all reading the same books and journals, and they do things differently. And the one thing I noticed a lot was that in Scandinavia, if there was an extraction case, they were more likely to do a second molar than a bicuspid. And I was going to ask you, you've lectured around the world. What kind of variances have you seen where, like, Japan goes left and Germany goes right? Or what kind of variances do you see among orthodontists? Not general dentists doing ortho, but intelligent, highly educated orthodontists seeing the same humans, but arriving at a different treatment. Where do you see the variances?
Well, I think just like before, any tooth that has an indication for extraction can be extracted. If you're a good orthodontist, you can do good ortho with second premolars or with first premolars extraction or with second molar extractions. I've done second molar cases. I've done first premolar cases. I've done second premolar cases. I don't think there's a none or all. I think everything has an indication. The advantage of extracting first premolars is if you have a lot of crowding or a lot of you need a lot of change in the profile, and you're close to where the problem is by extracting first premolars, then those are the teeth that should be extracted. But some cases, let's say you have totally broken down second molars with a lot of caries and the teeth are hopeless, then why not take those out, distalize the first molar, and treat the case just like without taking out the premolars, taking out the teeth that are in bad shape, allowing the third molars to drop in and having a full dentition, pretty much because the wisdom teeth will not be gone, and you would have used the space of the second molars, and you would have solved the crowding. So I think everything has an indication.
One of the most controversial things I ever said or wrote about, actually, the top two are both about endo. I am the owner of the publisher of Dental Town magazine, and way back in the day, we had this guy write an article on the 15-minute root canal. And, of course, all the endodontists went insane because they didn't even read it. And what he was saying is that in time mechanics, like an endodontist will use a rotary 15 file, but then he takes it out and he spends a minute or two changing the file and go to the next, whereas Dr. Scott Perkins in El Paso, Texas, he had 4 slow speeds. And when he walked in the room, it was already loaded with a 15, a 20, a 25, a 30. And he was just so efficient. He had no wasted movements. He literally could do a molar root canal in 15 minutes. And the other one was, again, the endodontist. In fact, the endodontist got so mad, one of them banned me to some place in Canada. But I said, I see... I don't understand all the second molar endo because to do a root canal, build up and crown on a second molar for $2,000 and wipe out this person's money for the year while they have 5 other cavities, I'd rather pull that tooth and do the 5 other cavities. And my evidence to this was that when I was in Scandinavia, a lot of orthodontists routinely pull second molars. And a lot of the occlusion research I've read is that a second molar, it's like 1/6 chewing on the first premolar, 1/3 on the second peri, 1/3 on the first molar, and only 1/6 on the second molar. That it's hardly functional. And if someone has a budget for their whole mouth, I wouldn't blow it all on a second molar. Do you think second molars are overrated compared to the first molar and the second bicuspid?
I think probably yes, and I think to extract a second molar, what you're saying, you have to also look at the panel and look at the position of the third molar, look how the roots are. So it's a complex decision. It's not just a. But I do believe I do understand what you're saying, and yeah, I think it's the last tooth in the arch, and it can be substituted by a third molar that is in good shape and with good root form and good angulation. So I think probably yeah, it's worth considering. I think the Scandinavians are correct in that. It's worth considering for extraction in the indicated cases. I've done it a few times.
Yeah, I just I mean, I just can't believe how many people I've seen in 32 years that spend their whole budget on one tooth and they've got 10 other cavities that don't get fixed because they spent all their money. So then what happens is now one of those other cavities grows in the nerve, then they come back, and now they need another $2,000 root canal bill, and they never get ahead of the curve. And I'm just like, who is doing this? And endodontists, about half their business is second molars. That's the tooth that all the general dentists don't want to be have a root canal done on it, and that's why America has 4,000 full-time endodontists. And mostly what they're doing is second molars because general dentists can't do that. And I look at half the second molars that I see have endo on, and I'm just thinking, did you tell that guy that he doesn't really even need that tooth? I think they're highly overrated. I think it's one of the most overrated things in dentistry. What do you see done in ortho where you think it's success, or where you what gets under your skin the most in orthodontics?
I think in my view, some of the dentoalveolar expansion I see that many people are trying with arch wires to expand teeth, and they're pushing them beyond their periodontal limits, and they're causing a lot of problems. So that's an area. Sometimes, especially a few techniques that use specific type of braces, I think they're not respecting the biologic limits.
I want you to weigh in on another issue because um, German oral surgeons and American oral surgeons do not see eye to eye. I mean, most American oral surgeons recommending removing a wisdom tooth, a third molar, if it exists. If it exists, they're coming out. A lot of the Germans, they want epidemiological evidence of why this wisdom teeth needs to be removed, and they remove at least one third less wisdom teeth than the Americans. So there's Europe versus North America. You're in South America. How do you weigh in and see this?
Well, I think I lean more towards the North American side. I tend to send for extraction a lot of the third molars because I see sometimes potential problems, and when I see that the arch is very crowded, you can even look at it in the Panorex. It's a very simple evaluation, and you don't see it doesn't have a space. I think you're better off just sending for removal of that, because I think posterior crowding is the less diagnosed problem in ortho. So I probably lean towards the North American side there.
Let's switch to advertising. On OrthoTown, we have Dental Town for the general dentist. We have OrthoTown. Of all the 12 specialties, orthodontists were the only ones who asked for their own website. And we, whenever a group wants their own website like Dental Town, we always make it. And I'm not allowed to post on there because it's only for orthodontists. So I own the site, but it's not mine. It's for the orthodontist. But a lot of them are talking about competition advertising the lowest price. One guy was saying this month, an orthodontist in town is offering braces for $1,999, which includes a laptop, free laptop with $1,999 will get you braces, only good until the end of the month. Do you see a lot of aggressive advertising in Venezuela for
No,
orthodontics?
we don't have that, fortunately. No.
So would you say it's a difference in culture between Venezuela and the United
Yeah,
States?
I think the United States has this 999 culture a lot. I see it because I've been going through the US forever. You go to a store and instead of saying $10, it says $9.99. And I think people just want to get free things. And in general, I don't think there's a free lunch. And some of this advertising, I think, a little bit misleading. I don't think it's very ethical either. And I don't think in the long term, this advertisement is, they hold up to their end of their deal. You know what I mean?
Um, and the other thing about the 1999 or the 9.99 or whatever is you need to know where it came from, and where it came from had nothing. A lot of people believe to this day that if I say it costs $9.99, a lot of people think it won't be as expensive as $1,000, and that's not where it came from. Where it came from was internal control over peculation. You had a cash register, and you didn't know if the person was stealing from you. So what you did is, by charging everything 99 cents, they would go in the morning, they'd break open 100 pennies, and then at the end of the day, the manager come back, and if you only had 70 pennies, he knows you made 30 transactions. So then he could look at the number of revenue and divide it by the transactions to get an average price, and it gives them a data point to know if you were stealing. So it all came out of an accounting metric to measure transactions, and a lot of people think it's a psychological thing, and it's not. I wanted to ask you another thing. There's business in 3 words is supply and demand, and that's that's it in 3 words. Well, the same guy who started the Orthodontic Centers of America. Now, did you remember Orthodontic Centers of America when you were back in Pennsylvania?
I remember seeing it, but I don't know much about it. But I remember
Was it past your time?
I think I've seen their advertising. They're like massive clinics, right?
Well, they're bankrupt now, but back in the day, I'm older than you, and they were the only company that made it to the New York Stock Exchange, IPO worth $1 billion, and then it went under, like a lot of the DSOs did in that, especially in that first round. All the ones that went into public markets like OCA, and there were about a dozen on NASDAQ, they all end up going under and were delisted, and Wall Street has no interest in any of these DSOs right now. That's what they tell me. But anyway, that same guy, he is now at Gaspar Lazaros at the Georgia School of Orthodontics, and he has received approval to double its enrollment to enable the school to train more residents, resident dentists, and especially orthodontists and dentofacial orthopedics at its 2 Atlanta campuses. With the Commission on Dental Accreditation approval, class sizes increased from 18 orthodontic residents per class to 36. And basically, this is what the Georgia School of Orthodontics is saying, and this is what the DSOs want, that, well, if you train twice as many orthodontists, I could get more of them for less money. I mean, obviously, if you increase the supply and hold the demand constant, the price will fall. Do you see that happening in Venezuela too? Where
No, I don't have an opinion on that. I think orthodontics is a specialty that needs to be taught, and I think large classes is difficult to control and to teach everybody. But I don't have an opinion on that.
Because back in the OCO days, I mean, he was when he was raising money to do his IPO, he was actually, I think he started 3 schools, and so it's a big supply and demand. When you talk to orthodontists, what percent of you are you? If you did 100 cases, how many of those cases would you need a lab, and how many of those cases do you do the lab work in your office completely and don't need a lab?
Well, there are cases where you need labs if you need appliances. Let's say you need expanders, you need nances, you need retainers, you need. I think you always need a lab. You can have an in-house lab, which we used to do a long time ago, but I think you will never get out of the lab. I think every now and then you will need a lab.
And do you tend to do more of your lab work, or do you send
No,
more?
we send out. We don't do it.
You send it out.
Yeah.
And also, when you say are you agnostic to the brackets and wires? I mean, and, Dentsply, Sirona. I mean, all the big companies have an orthodontic line. I mean, whether it's Danaher, which is Dentsply. Do you feel strongly that one set of brackets and wires brand works better for you, or are you more agnostic and would not really focused on one company?
I think they're tools, and I think what's most important is the knowledge of the orthodontics. So I don't have any financial agreements with any company, and I'm not married to any company. I would use what I think is best in each situation. So I'm more agnostic in that, you can say.
So on August 17th, 2020, did you read the letter from Dentsply, Sirona, about said did you hear about the Dentsply Sirona
No,
orthodontics customer? It
no.
says it basically to inform you that we are going to. It says, "Dear Dentsply Sirona orthodontics customer, dated August 17, 2020, we're reaching out to you, our valued customer, to inform you that we intend to exit the traditional orthodontic business. The market shifts towards clear aligners and digital solutions requires Dentsply Sirona to adjust its business to meet customer demand in this growing area. We are fully committed to building our digital orthodontic solution, leveraging the investments and expertise of Orametric SureSmile and its state-of-the-art digital treatment planning platform operations. Please note the following. We will, but anyway, what do you think of that shift?
I really don't have an opinion. I don't know what to say. I think I can tell you what I do is I use what is best for me, and I don't judge big companies and their market strategies. I'm an orthodontist. I really don't know much about that, and I don't want to talk about something I don't know.
All right, fair enough. So what do you? One of the things that concerns me about the young generation is you go back to the United States. Which I only have data on the United States. I don't have for the world or Venezuela. But in 1900, healthcare was 1% of the GDP, and there were no specialties in dentistry or medicine. And by 2000, it was 14% of the GDP. The MDs had 58 specialties, dentists had 9. Now it's 2020, and now there's 12 specialties. And you just see kids coming out, and they want to learn it all. They want to learn how to place implants, do ortho, molar endo, everything. And this clear aligner. Usually it's a debate, should I go into clear aligners or should I go into placing implants? And a lot of the young kids coming out of dental school, they're so ambitious and they're so excited. They want to learn all 12 specialties. And I tell them, you're not going to go back in time. I mean, we're not going back to 1900 where one person treats the whole damn body. I mean, it's very, very specialized. As you learn more and more knowledge, you don't have time to learn the other knowledge. But what would you say to a kid who just graduated this year in 2020 that says, well, I'm a general dentist, but I'm going to learn how to place implants and I'm going to learn how to do clear liners? What would you say? What advice would you give them as an orthodontist?
My advice is if you want to do a specialty, go into a specialist program and learn everything about the specialty. And once you have knowledge, you decide what you do. And I'm a strong believer in specialties. I don't think you can do everything and know about everything, because even in your own specialty, there are many things you won't know. So I think if you wanna, don't bite more than you can chew. That would be my advice.
And are you doing a lot? Are you moving towards a digital solution where someday, that's between oral scans and computers and printers? Are you using a printer, anything?
We're, we're starting to move diagnostically to digital, and I think eventually everything is going to be moved that way. I think yes.
So, so,
Actually,
so,
actually, many of our patients that go through orthodontic surgery, the oral maxillofacial surgery surgeon, one of the ones we work with, is doing all the planning with the computer and all the digital. So I think every specialty is going to be influenced by this, not only orthodontics.
one of the fun things about getting old is you see something that went out of style and then it's back and you're like, oh, I saw that rodeo 20, 30 years ago. But I'm seeing a resurgence of lingual orthodontics. I think so many people realize they didn't want fixed, so they're going to clear aligners. But obviously, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of indications for fixed. Do you see lingual orthodontics making a comeback so that the nobody can see the wires and brackets, or do you think it died appropriately the first time?
I think it has a place. I don't do lingual, but I think it has a place. I think it's, for me, in my hands, it's complex to do it, and I don't do it. But yeah, there's people that do it well. I know a couple of orthodontists that do it well, and I think it has a place. I don't do it, but I think it has a place. Yes, it has a market for sure.
Um, do you mind? I know it's been 1 hour. We went over the hour. Can I still ask you a few more questions? Can we go into some overtime?
Yeah, we can do 10 more minutes, and we're done.
Okay. A couple more questions. There was a big article in a big magazine called The Atlantic that got big wide circulation. It says Americans are spending billions on unnecessary dental treatments. The evidence that braces make you healthy is shaky at best. And it wasn't even out for a day, and patients start coming into your office and asking about that. And I lived through this just recently in America. The New York Times ran an article that said there's no evidence on flossing. And I don't know how you would make a double-blind study. Would you have to run in the hospital when two identical twins were born and kidnap one of them as the control and let the other one grow up in Caracas? I mean, but what do you say? This article went to link, says the evidence that braces make you healthier is shaky at best, and basically the article's saying, dude, it's all cosmetics. You're not doing anything. You're not doing orthodontics for your health. You're doing them to look as pretty as a peacock for your for mating or self-esteem or whatever.
I think it's wrong. I think orthodontics has a lot of functional to it, and I think just from the basics. Think of somebody with a lot of lower crowding and being able to brush your teeth, and the same person with the teeth aligned. I do believe in bite stability, that it also holds up better, all the system, the muscles, the joints, everything. So I'm not gonna I'm not a good customer for that idea.
Well, see, I thought you would read that article because guess who was quoted in that is Peter Greco from University of Pennsylvania. It says expert Peter Greco, a clinical professor of orthodontics at the University of Pennsylvania and an associate editor of the American Journal of Orthopedic and Dental Facial Orthopedics, points out that orthodontic treatments are uniquely difficult to experimentally test. And so treatment decisions are often based on traditional knowledge and orthodontist clinical experience rather than on scientific evidence. And I couldn't agree more. I wish the guy who wrote the article on flossing, I would love to be able to take two of his family members for the long term on flossing. I mean, some of these experiments to prove this stuff, I don't even know how you'd set up the experiment.
Yeah, I didn't read it, but
I'll email it to you.
Dr. Greco is one of the best orthodontists in the world. He's a very smart orthodontist and a great clinician. But I didn't read it, so I cannot comment on that.
Okay, no worries. I'll send it to you. So last but
I will always comment on what I know and what I read. I will not, tell you an opinion of something I don't know.
Yeah. Last but not least, let's end on this. I know everyone that listens to me, they want to know the most about what's going on with the pandemic. Nobody can predict the future. It's the first day of September. Is that you live in between two hot spots. I mean, Brazil and America, I think, are the top two countries with cases. I know that you're not an expert in the future because the future doesn't even exist yet. But where do you think, final question, where do you think we are in the pandemic, and what are you expecting to see this September, October, November, December, the rest of 2020? And then what do you think is going to happen in 2021? And when do you think, go ahead, go on.
I think we're in the early stages. I think we're like if it's a 9-inning ball game, I think we're in inning number 2. or something like that. And I think because even if you look at the declaration that the German government gave, I think was Angela Merkel, she said that 70% of the German population is going to get contact with the COVID, with the coronavirus, and she said it's a 2-year problem. So I think we're on this for a long run. I think we're not. We just. I don't think we still have the grasp of the how long this situation is gonna last. I think this is a long run. Not only that, but look at the report just came in CNN where it said that a patient in Hong Kong tested positive 140 days after testing positive the first time. So they're suggesting reinfection with the COVID. So I think we're in this for a long battle. We're not. This is a long problem. This is not a short problem.
Well, the dentists are emailing me. They your questions. My only email is howard@dentaltown.com, and I love the questions in the comments. YouTube, that really helps me a lot. But they're always saying they want to know if a vaccine comes out. Miguel? Are you going to take the vaccine?
Yeah, I will take the vaccine for sure.
And do you see? Are you close to that? I mean, is there anything that's going to be released, do you think, in the next 4 months in 2020 that you'll be taking?
No, I don't think so. I think of a good, serious vaccine. They may come out, strange vaccines. There are vaccines coming out in, rare places. But I think a good vaccine with good clinical trials and with the approval of a European community or FDA, I think we're still in a long. This is a long battle. I don't think we're ready in the next few months. I don't see it coming. Maybe I'm wrong.
And last but not least, my final thought is I know humans are crazy. Humans aren't crazy. They're wild animals. I mean, they always say, even my mom, if I say she's a Homo sapien, she says, Howie, I'm not a Homo sapien. I'm a human being. She denies being a Homo sapien, but they're wild. I don't think they're crazy. I mean, most of the things of what people do is like, yeah, that's what wild animals do. But yesterday was the happy 101st birthday to Dr. Maurice Ralph Hillman, PhD, who was born on August 30th, 1919, died 2005, who developed 8 of the 14 vaccines routinely scheduled: measles, mumps, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, chickenpox, meningitis, pneumonia, Haemophilus influenza, and everybody's an anti-vaxxer. Everybody's trashing this guy, but every scientist and epidemiology says that that is the number one scientist that has saved the most lives in history. Dr. Hellman, you're my hero. I'm so sorry that you spent your whole life making 8 of the 14 regularly, routinely scheduled vaccines, and a quarter of Americans think you're nuts or a conspiracy. But I cannot wait till they get a new vaccine for this one. It was just an honor to get you on there. When I asked you to come on the show, I was so honored that you come on. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your life to come on the show and talk to my friends and homies about all things orthodontics. It was truly an honor to podcast you.
Thank you very much. An honor for me. And send me a copy of the conversation we had. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And when the pandemic's over, I want to visit Caracas. I would love to
visit Phoenix as well. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Have a good day.